All right. Today we're going to focus on the settings. This class is Introduction to SolidCAM Part 1, the settings. We're not going to go through all the settings, but we're going to go through most, well, not most, probably a little less than half, but quite a few of them to help you get started in the way that you prefer to work with SolidCAM. Now, before we go there, first things first, if you're working on Windows 7, you're definitely going to want to come down to the search programs and files and type in UAC, and you're going to want to change the user account controls. Normally they're set at 3/4. You're going to want to drop that down. This is Microsoft's way of trying to make your PC run more like a Mac, to where it's always asking you a question on whether or not you want to run executables. This can cause problems with running SolidCAM, so I highly recommend you pull that down. If you do pull it down and it was up, it may require you to restart. Now, I am going to record. I am actually recording this session right now, so you can request a copy. My name is Darren Bryant, and I am going to type that down here at the chat window here with my email address, darren.bryant@solidcam.com. So if you'd like to request a copy of this session, go ahead and shoot me an email. I also have other videos that you can request, or if you have any questions for me about this session or anything else. If we have time, and we didn't have time last time, but if we have time, we'll open it up for questions and answers. And by the way, you can raise your hand throughout the session. There's a little hand icon there. You can raise your hand, and at the end, I will address the questions if there are any. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and come into SolidCAM and go to SolidCAM Settings. Now, I've reset all of mine to standard settings, default settings. I just hit the Reset All pages. So we're going to go through quite a few of these here so that you can get set up to work per your environment. Now, the very first thing that I do, if you've used the basic install of C program files, the default path, then your paths are going to look very similar to this. I don't like you running out of the user public folders, because here's what also Microsoft does. When you install a program, any kind of software, into the program's file directory, all these folders get locked out. So they've got kind of a lock on them. And what I mean by that is, let's say that you wanted to change out a file in one of these. You wanted to copy a file into there. Well, you can certainly grab one and copy it in there, and it'll look like it copies in there. But what it actually does is it repaths that particular file to the users. I believe it goes to the user, app data, and then it's going to go into one of these folders. That's where the file actually resides then from then on. But it's got some kind of connection point in the other folder, so it knows where it's at. So in the past, Microsoft, if you put a file somewhere, that's where it was. Now that's not the case. So don't like working out of the user directory. However, SolidCAM does follow the Windows platform. So if you do install and see program files, you're going to have in your users public documents, SolidCAM, and then whatever version you installed, you're going to have a GPP and a tables folder. The GPP tool is where your posts go. So if you get new posts from us or updated posts, you simply drop them into the GPP tool. Tables folder houses all kinds of stuff. iDatabase is your iMachining database, which is all the material libraries for iMachining. Inside your inch folder, you have anytime you see a TAB file, that's a tool library file, and you can have many as you want here. There's all kinds of files in here that will change as you work with SolidCAM. So what I'm getting at is these two folders need to be able to be manipulated, which is why they've been copied here. I prefer not to work out of C users directory. I don't like working out of documents, period. Also, I would like to have this backed up. So the way that I like to do this is to simply come into your C users public document settings here and copy out the GPP tool and the table. Don't cut it, just copy it. And in my case, I always use a local hard drive. I don't put it on the C drive. That's where I install all my programs. My D drive is my data program, all my storage, if you will. So I create a folder, SolidCAM, and I dropped in my GPP tool and my tables folder in here. Now what we're going to do is in SolidCAM, we're going to path to the new location rather than to the C location. What does this do for me? Well, my D drive gets backed up regularly, so I'm always being backed up, so I don't have to worry about it. And none of my folders none of the working files that I'm going to work with all the time are located in the C programs directory or even in SolidCAM at all. So that if I have to redo my computer or something happens, I haven't lost any progress. I highly recommend this. Now, you can path these and you can put these on a network drive if you'd like. Just know that if you're working off of a network drive and you get a lot of traffic in your network, your system will slow down when you're working in SolidCAM. This is why I prefer a local hard drive that once is backed up. But if you're okay with your network traffic and you never really see any problems, then it's completely okay to put it there. So mine are already copied there, so let's go ahead and come into here. And we're going to path these to the new location. If I hover over the little drop-down, you can see it goes to, this first one's a little unique. This user directory for CAM parts is actually the opening folder when you say File Open when you're looking for a SolidCAM project, or if you're starting a new SolidCAM project and you don't know where to place it, by default it's going to place it here unless you decide to put it into a different location. So we're going to go ahead and path that to a customer folder, which is something that I have. So I'm going to come down to D, and I've created a customer folder myself, and that's where some of my customers exist. So I'm just going to go ahead and select OK. Now, the rest of these are going to be pathed to that inch folder that we were referring to. Actually, because I hit defaults on here, it defaulted back to metric. As you can see, it says tables metric. To simply change that before you even change the paths, just come over to units and change it over to inch. Then you can go back to user directories and you will see that it's actually in tables inch now. But that's in users public. I want to go to the new location on my D drive. So I'm going to go ahead and path to that location. Now for this one, which is the Excel file for threading tables, which is actually it's looking for an Excel spreadsheet. And you can see it's called threading standard underscore inch. If you were in metric, it would be metric. But it's an XLS table. So still it's in the tables inch. That's where we want to browse. So to the D drive again. And SolidCAM, tables, inch. And then I'm looking for that threading table right there. So that's what I want. SolidCAM tables inch threading standard underscore inch XLS. The last one is the directory for your iMachining materials. So as you can see, it goes to tables iDatabase. Again, browse to the D drive, go to SolidCAM. Oops, went to the wrong place. SolidCAM tables iDatabase. We'll select OK. All right, units. Nothing to do in here other than what we did before by changing it over to inch. Default locations, default CNC controller. This is that GPP tool folder that we moved from the users group or the users C directory. So we're going to go ahead and path that to the new location. So it's just simply going into the GPP tool. So we're going to select browse, going to go to our D drive, and we're going to come on down to GPP tool. Now, if you ever get any revisions on posts, this is where you want to put them. Or if you get a new post, this is where you want to put it so it shows up. Okay, and in that directory, you're going to have all of your posts. If you do milling, you do turning, you do mill turn, and you do wire, then you're going to want to select a default post for each of those. Most people are only just doing milling, or maybe they're doing turning. Many people are starting to get into mill turn now, but I'm going to grab a default post. That just simply means that every time I start a CAM project and I start a milling project, it's going to default to my 3-axis Haas VF3SS post. Turning, I do have a favorite one here. I'm going to grab that one. And for my mill turn, I'm going to grab a Doosan. All right. I'm not going to worry about my wire right now. So we're going to come back up to GCode. Some companies require you to save your GCode in a particular folder, and if that's the case, you can go ahead and say in the GCode directory and then simply path it to wherever you want to put it. But by default, it's going to place the GCode files when you say generate GCode. It's going to put it in the same directory as the CAM part. Okay. You can put it according to the PRP file. PRP file is a preprocessor file, and it resides inside the GPP tool folder. All right. When you produce GCode, what is it going to open up in? Well, right now, by default, in everybody's system, it's going to open up into Notepad. However, if you have a third-party DNC or third-party editor, you can go ahead and use that. Mine happens to be one and the same. My editor also has DNC capabilities. So we're going to go ahead and, it's actually on my C drive. I'm going to path to the executable. It is a 32-bit program, so we want to go to Edit NC. Now, every time I produce GCode, my Edit NC is going to open up automatically. All right, moving on down to GCosimulation. This is only for the customers that have bought like NC Verify or Vericut or GNavi, DMG, IMS Verify. This is actual GCode verification, and you can launch your GCode verification from within SolidCAM. I don't have any, so I'm not going to path anything there, but you would path to the executable. Let's go on down to CAM part. Now, there are 3 different ways to work inside SolidCAM when you create a project. The first way is non-compressed, the second is compressed, and the third is to embed all the CAM project files directly in the SOLIDWORKS file. PRT and PRZ will adhere to the ISO 9000 rules by creating a copy of the part and putting the original part away for safekeeping. Okay, creating the CAM project directly inside the SOLIDWORKS file does not, but most people don't have to adhere to the ISO 9000. So there are multiple ways to work. I prefer PRT, uncompressed mode. PRZ is compressed mode. It simply means that when you're done with the project, instead of having a file in a folder, it zips it up into one file. So you would have your SOLIDWORKS file that you created the project from, and you'd have a PRZ, which is your project. Most people work in that mode. Okay. So in this mode, you'd have a PRT, a folder, and the SOLIDWORKS file. In this one, you'd have the PRZ and the SOLIDWORKS file. If you worked in internal mode, you'd simply have a SOLIDWORKS file. It would not make a copy. It would embed the CAM project files directly inside there, and you can have more than one CAM project embedded into the SOLIDWORKS part. The other thing about working in compressed or non-compressed mode here, by default, you are in compressed mode. That simply means that when you're done with the CAM project, it's going to compress it. Okay, but while you're working on it, if you're looking to get to some of the files, you're going to have to find a location where it's uncompressed, and that would be down here. Now it's in that C users data again, so I like to path that somewhere simple and easy to get to, knowing where it's at all times. So dtemp is fine. So while I'm working on the project, if I go to dtemp, I can see all my files if I want to get to them. However, I don't work in compressed mode, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. But at any time, if you decide, yeah, I like working on compressed, but now I want to kind of compress things, clean things up, go ahead and turn on create new CAM parts to compressed mode, and you can convert non-compressed CAM parts to compressed mode just by simply opening them and then saving them. Here's your compression factor if you want to change that. Automatic CAM part definition. You have milling, turning, mill turn, and wire cut. By default, you're looking at the default settings right here. This right here, if this is for the box option, you can see it's a radio button for box and you have a radio button for cylinder. We have 5 different methods for creating stock. These are just 2 of the methods of the 5 that we can create stock from. But if you want to have a basic box built around whatever part you have, you can leave it set to box, and then you can simply change your values on how bigger than the part you want the box to be. Or if you're always working the exact size, you can say absolute coordinates and give it a size of the box. Okay, and here's the cylinder parameters. So up here in the CAM, if you decide you want a stock or a cylinder, a box or a cylinder around the part, they are going to follow these numbers here. But even if you do create it automatically and you decide you don't want that, you can always go in there right in the CAM project and simply change it. But for me, I've gotten used to just leaving it off, and because my methods change from time to time. I don't use just one method. Sometimes I use 3D model. Sometimes I use a simple box. But either way, I can do that right there on the fly when I'm in the part. So I leave mine deselected. I recommend that, but you'll see how it works. You can try it both ways. Definition of target is probably a good option to leave on, even though I will eventually turn it off. What it does is it basically says that whatever is on the screen inside SOLIDWORKS at the time that you start a SolidCAM project, it's going to select whatever's on the screen as the target. The target is the model you're trying to make. It's what you're shooting for, so we call it the target. Now, that's fine if you're working basically with one part and you're not working with assemblies, like you're, oh, now I just want to cut this one part. In an assembly mode, it would automatically select all the parts as the target. Problem with that is, it's not really a problem, it requires an extra step for you to update any of the parts inside the assembly if you decide to work on them and then you get a revision on one of those, because then it would require you to copy that part and drop it into the folder. So it would require action on your part. If you're in single part mode, which is 99% of the people, then it automatically updates because it's made a copy of that one part and puts your original part away for safekeeping. But the part that you're working on is called the design model, and it's in perfect reference to the original. So if anything changes on the original, it updates the design model automatically. So, like I said, most of you probably will work with just one part at a time, and then you don't have to think about any of this. It's going to be automatically updated. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and turn mine off. Now, that's just for milling. For turning, I definitely prefer turning both off because I like to define my stock and I like to define my target and I like to see it happen. And I generally don't have my create machine setup or definition of fixture and clamp. Now, you will be required to define a fixture before you start creating toolpath for a turning, because we need to know where your fixture is. Now, if you're not really concerned about the fixture and you're just never worried about it, then I would leave this checked. That way it's automatically created. You never have to think about it, and you don't care what it looks like. But if you do care what it looks like and you want to create it, and by the way, you can create it one time and you can use it over and over again. So it's not like you have to create it every time. But you would deselect that here if you wanted to create your own. Of course, even if you did create it here automatically, you can always go back and change it. So while you're in the CAM project. So again, these are all just defaults. These are just automatics. If you think it'll help you, less clicks to set up your part, then go ahead and include it. Now, mill turn, I do the same thing. I turn off definition of stock and target, but I do leave on create machine setup, define definition of fixture and clamp, create coordinate systems for each subspindle, opposite side of subspindle with subspindle. This has to do with the direction arrow. I do leave this on because then when I create my first coordinate system, first of all, it creates a machine setup for me, and then it creates a fixture and clamp for me. But then when I create my first coordinate system, if I have a main and a sub, it'll automatically create a coordinate system on the sub spindle. So it's kind of handy. So that I do leave on. Let's go ahead and move on to coordinate definition. And there's only a couple things in here we need to set here. Tool start level, I like to get this up and out of the way. If it's think of it as a specialized tool change point. If it gets in your way, we can simply remove it from the toolpath, or from, sorry, not from the toolpath, but from the post, so it's not generated in GCode. The easy way to check it is simply put in a weird number here, post it out, see if you get that number. If you get that number and you don't want it, we can just simply eliminate that feature in the post. Most people don't need it, and it shouldn't be turned on in basic post. But if it is, that's how you test it. Just put in a weird number, generate some G-code, see if it comes up, and then we can just eliminate that for you. Clearance level delta, is your rapid plane. Generally, most people set it at 1 inch. You can set it whatever you like. It's always going to be 1 inch above your part. Wherever your highest point of your part is, it'll be 1 inch above that. We talked about stock definition. Let's go ahead and go down to synchronization. Now, 3 different ways to work. You don't have to work with synchronization. So if your original model changes, you don't have to have it affect your CAM model at all or your CAM project. However, that's one of the huge benefits of using SolidCAM is that your part, if it gets updated, will also revise your toolpath and your G-code. If that's the case, if that's what you want, you're going to definitely want to check synchronization always. Personal preference, don't ever check the first one. Ask before synchronization check because it asks you all the time, and I get tired of answering it. So I just turn that off. I work in semi-automatic mode, which means that if a part is changed and I open up my CAM project, I'm going to be notified that something's changed, and I'm going to see that familiar red and green stoplight icon over the top of the stock, the target, or any one of the tool paths that's been affected by that revision or change. Now, I like to do that because then I can put a little check mark box in the box next to the toolpath, and I can see what the old toolpath looked like before I decide to let it to update. So because that icon's over everything that needs to be updated, I can simply go to that element, right-click, synchronize, and recalculate, and it automatically updates my toolpath. So it requires an extra click on my side, but I also get to see what the old toolpath was and exactly what has changed over the model. If you decide to check both of these, so where you synchronize automatically and calculate the operations after the synchronization, then as soon as you open the file, the CAM project, it's automatically going to ripple through and change, update your stock, your target, and any one of your toolpaths automatically. Now, my suggestion is you run with it off for just a little while until you get used to the way that it works. Once you get used to the way it works, go ahead and check them. Other thing in here, ask user to find original model. If the model changes names or if it moves out of that folder, then it'll come up with a question asking you, hey, model, I can't find the original model. Would you like to locate it yourself? CAM cleanup part, nothing we have to do here. Let's go down to toolpath parameters or simulation, sorry. You do have 8 different simulation modes in Verify when you go into or when you go into simulation. Machine simulation is the only one that it comes free with 5-axis, but otherwise you have to purchase it. It's $1,500. It shows true kinematics, so you can draw up your machine. You can see your table, your head moves, your spindles, your rotaries, your trunnion table, whatever it is that you're using. You can see if the heads are going to collide and stuff like that. So you can actually draw your whole entire machine in as much detail as you want. If you have that option, we will assemble the post for you and the machine simulation, but we do need the files. So this is the only one you may want to turn off if you don't own it, because then it just doesn't show up in the 8 modes that will show up when you go into simulation. All right. Moving down to machine simulation. This, again, is strictly for the machine simulation, but I do use machine sim, so I'm going to go ahead and browse out to my tables machine sim folder, but in the new location, D, tables, machine sim. Also, if you do have machine simulation, you're going to want to enable verification. Enabling verification allows the stock that you've created inside the SolidCAM project to be passed to the machine simulation. All right. Nothing in here. Spin and feed defaults. This is really for just some basic defaults for every tool that you create. Obviously, a center drill versus a 3/4 inch carbide end mill, they're going to have vastly different speeds. But they do need to be defaulted to something, so I would just put in any values here. As long as you have numbers in here, it's fine, because you will change those on the fly anyway. When you create your tools, your feeds and your speeds will be remembered in libraries, so that when you create a 1/2-inch carbide end mill for aluminum, you can type in the feeds and speeds that you want, and every time you pick that tool, that's the feeds and speeds that it'll be defaulted to. So this is really just to get some numbers in there, because you don't want to zero in here, because you can see weird things happen. So you just want to put some values in here. Colors, again, we're talking about defaults here. So if you don't want the clamp to be orange, change it to whatever you want. Material bounds, you don't want green, whatever. Go ahead and pick your colors. This is an important feature down here. If you are on the new version, it's green. If you're on the older version, it's red. I don't like the color red. It denotes gouging. What it is it fills in the background of a field of depths and values. So let's say when you go to your levels page, you have an upper level and you have a lower level, or your depth of your pocket, whatever. You can either type in the values and say, I want to go from 0 to a -1 inch with this cutter. Well, you can certainly type it in, but it's non-associative, meaning, well, let me restate that. We're already associative to the model and the toolpath. We will update the toolpath no matter what. But this gives you a greater level of associativity by, if you use the box that will be next to the field, a little button that you push, and you pick a face or a vertice. A vertice is just the endpoint of a line. Okay? If you pick either a face or a vertice line, the field will be colored in green, just letting you know that you've just associated that field with the part. Nice thing about that is that you can't mistype a number, for one. The other thing is that if that particular face or vertice changes in height, the number will change along with it. That's what I mean by a deeper level of associativity. So older systems have red, and you can change them in the older systems. Newer systems have green, so you can do whatever color you want. Maybe yellow. Yellow is good too. CAM tree. To allow for, say, tool numbers, or show tools in the tree, or tool positioning, or show operation numbers on the tree, you just check in here which ones you might want to be able to turn on later if you need to. This doesn't do it automatically. It just gives you the option to turn it on when you're inside the tree. So those are generally the two I use. Coordinate systems, definitely, and show the tool number. So I'm going to go ahead and actually, now that I think about that, I think if you click them here, they actually show up on the tree. So CAM messages, you are going to see a lot of CAM messages in the beginning. Ones like, let's say I changed a profile. Well, you're going to see the profile being changed. Actually, can you guys give me 1 second? I'm going to take a drink of water so I don't keep coughing. All right. So you're going to see a lot of CAM messages as you're working in the beginning, like, hey, is it okay to accept this profile, or is it okay to accept this dialog box? If you, right below it, it'll say, if you don't want to see this message again, you can check here. If you check there, it'll simply deselect it in here. So you can turn all your CAM messages back on if you'd like, just, unselect all or select all. Templates. First thing we're going to do is path it, and then we'll talk about it. We have to go to tables inch, templates default. So tables, inch, templates, default. So what these are, depending on the level you got, they don't come in 2D Express. I believe they come in standard. In fact, I'm sure of it. But you can start off with a particular template for any given toolpath, like face mill. You could have 5 different templates that you prefer to use. And you can create those. So you can, every time you start a face mill, you can always have, your depth set, or you can always have a tool picked, or you can whatever you want as a default in there, you can create in templates. So in order to do that, that happens inside the actual toolpath itself. You can, up in the right-hand corner, there's going to be a saved template, and there's going to be an open template. Now, that's a way to bring those changes in after you've already began one. But if you want it to be there automatically before you go in there, you can set it right here. So if you had 5 face mill operations, you could say, okay, I want to use templates for face, and then you would simply pick the default face template that you want to use as a default. So every time you come into face, that's the one that's going to show up. Do that for all of these if you'd like. You can do it for iMachine. You can do it for 3D milling. There's all kinds in here. So do templates for everything. All right. Tolerance. This is kind of cool. This is fairly new. You have probe stuff, probe tolerances you can change, but you also have HSM and HSR, which is high-speed milling, high-speed roughing. Actually, HSM is the technology. HSR is just the roughing. HSM is really the finishing portion of it. And then, of course, you have HSS, which is high-speed surfacing, which is actually the full 5-axis software, but we've locked out the 4th and the 5th. Actually, it pertains to both. You can use HSS in 3-axis, or you can use it in 4 and 5. If you've purchased it for 3-axis only, then it'll have the 4th and the 5th axis locked out. But basically, you can type in a tolerance when you're in there, a surface tolerance. But they've included these sliders here, so now you can set a preset right here to any value you want, and of course you can change the values to whatever you want. So I'm not going to mess with them right now. I'm just going to go ahead and go into machining process, nothing to do here. Tool search, nothing to do here. Tool tables. This is for your tool libraries. So if you want a default tool library here, you can go ahead and default it to it, but you're going to want to path this probably to a network place. Probably not even necessarily a local hard drive, because if you have multiple people using the tool libraries, you're probably all going to want to draw or pull from the same tool libraries. And when you create tools, you're going to want to create in the same place. So for the import, I'm going to go to tables inch again, and for the export, I'm going to do the same. So tables inch, and again here, tables inch. All right. Anything else in here we need? Nope. Documentation? Nope. iMachining? No. Parallel operations? No. No and no. Okay. So the last one on the list. Enable mouse support. If you have a 3D connection device or a space mouse or something like that, you can go ahead and enable that, and it will give you greater flexibility, functionality, if you will, inside our product. It doesn't make it work. It just makes it gives you more options. To make it work, you would install the drivers. But this just will, first of all, to let you use it in verification, in a couple other smaller windows that are off the screen. So this is a good thing if you're using 3D connection. The other thing down here to note is that you have an autosave. Right now, the whole part, the full entire part, is being saved every 10 minutes, or whatever value you put in there. However, be aware that every time you do something, edit something, define something, we incrementally save in the background, which you never even know is going on. So you're always up to date no matter what happens. You could lose power and computer goes off, and you would have had 20 toolpaths in there, and you wouldn't have to worry about it. Let's say you turn this off by putting a 0 in here, and you didn't want to do autosave. Well, we're still doing an incremental save in the background for you. So, but you don't have to use it, but that is a good thing to have. So I'm going to go ahead and leave mine on. We're going to go ahead and select OK. I just like to come back into it just to make sure that all my settings did actually get set. Looks like my paths are good. Miscellaneous is good. So at this point, I would save my settings, and I'm going to put it into my D drive again, right here. What that does is it just saved everything that I just set. So at any point, you could use this a couple different ways. If you have 2 people working on one computer and they work in night shifts and morning shifts or whatever, they can have their own settings. So in the morning, they can just simply load up their presets, whatever they like, or this saved file that we just created, you could give to Joe across the shop, and he could automatically set all of his to the way you have yours set, so you're all pointing to the same direction. So, so I saved that. Now what I'm going to do is simply exit SolidCAM. So that exits the settings. It shuts down the executable. And now I'm going to open it again, SolidCAM Settings, and wait for it to come up. What I just did allows me to use the settings that I just changed for my first CAM project. So all they're in here. I'm ready to load in a file and start a CAM project. All right, guys. I don't see any hands up, so if there are any questions that you think about later, please shoot me an email. Darrin.Bryan, DARRIN.BRYANT at solidcam.com if you have any questions, or if you'd like to request the recording of this session. And like I said, since there is no hands raised right now, we'll go ahead and end this session today. Next week, we'll do InventorCAM settings. The week after that, we're going to continue on where we left off right here. So 2 weeks from now, we'll have another webinar. All right? You guys have a great day, and we hope to see you next time.